Welcome back. I'm going to do step 3.4, which is extract commitment line items into ODS 0PU underscore O31 as a delta load. And as I said before, delta load uh, is a type of load that takes place periodically. At Durham County, I believe at the moment we have scheduled delta loads to take place on a daily basis. Um, but that is the delta load that we have is automated for all the extraction via a process chain. There is really once a process chain is in there, there's really no need to do a delta load manually. So I don't anticipate that you would be using a manual delta load, but I'm just going to show you how a manual delta load takes place, and hopefully you will understand. You'll realize that the process chain is essentially stringing together all these manual delta loads into a process, which is what is called a process chain. So we are in this step 3.4. We are doing a delta load. The name of the info source is here, 0PU ISPS 31. Make a note of that. Let's go back. We are in the admin workbench, and well, I'm already in the info source, 0PU underscore ISPS 31. In case you're not able to find it, use the binoculars to get there. Um, Under the info source, there's a source system, and under that, there is a delta load. I mean, there's an info package created for delta load already. And if I'm going to change mode, the system is showing a pop-up because it's telling me that you don't have to do this delta load manually because it already exists in a process chain. So I'm going to say OK, and if you notice, the delta load, the data selection screen is already grayed out, and this data selection there is not something I entered, but that came from the initial load. Remember, there was a slice of data, the initialization option. So since there's an initial load created already, the system looks at the selection for which initial load was created, and then it displays it in the data selection, and I don't really have any way to change it. Under processing, it still goes to PSA before it goes to data target. Under data target, select the second radio button. We have only one data target, which is ODS, so we are fine. In the update, you notice now that you see when you were doing when we had full update and initial load, we didn't really have this selection. But since there's a there was an initial load created already, the system prompts you for a delta. That this selection becomes available called delta update, so which I've selected. So select delta update. We are again doing we're updating data even if no master data exists, and then I'm going to schedule it. Okay, and the process is pretty much the same. Once I schedule it, um, I don't know whether there's going to be any record. If the system were actively being used and after we ran an initial load, then there would be something in the delta queue. But at the moment, I'm doing this whole thing in a QAS box, which is not being used. So even when I create a manual load, delta load, it's just showing 0 records. So this record could be anything. Okay, depends on how much the source system was being used. But anyway, let's go back to let's click on the data target, go to the request, because we need to activate it regardless whether it's 0 records or 1 record on it. We need to activate it. So I'm going to activate that. The process, if you recall, is pretty much the same. Whenever data gets loaded, you need to go to the ODS, you need to select the request and activate it. So the activation creates a background job. Hopefully that shouldn't take long. Okay, I'm going to pause at the moment and then come back when it's okay. The request got activated. So that's how we do a delta upload manually. The next step in 3.5 I'll show you how delta load is done manually to the reporting cube. So just so that you understand, at the moment I've created a delta load, a manual delta load here between the ECC system and BW system. Why is it a manual load? Because in this case, I didn't I created the delta load via an info package, and I clicked on start myself physically. It was not triggered by a process chain, which is why it was a manual load. But in most cases, I mean, in Durham County, we have a process chain in place, so you won't have a need for doing this step. But if you have a process chain, then you can. Uh, I'll explain to you later on how a process chain can be scheduled and so on and so forth. But at the moment, we've created a manual delta load from ECC into the ODS for commitment line items in funds management. Thank you so much.